3 years ago, Ethan was the kind of man people stood up for when he entered a room. He owned a construction company in the center of the city. Glass office, 14th floor. 2 assistants outside his cabin every morning. Employees waited for his approval before making decisions. Clients returned his calls within minutes. At the time, Ethan believed all of that meant something. He believed respect was permanent. But success can be dangerously loud. So loud that eventually you stop hearing the truth. The truth was, most people were not respecting the man. They were respecting the position, the money, the success. And the frightening thing about success is that it hides reality from you. Then one bad year changed everything. A project failed. Loans increased. Payments stopped coming. And slowly, the life Ethan spent 15 years building started collapsing in silence. The company disappeared first, then the office, then the people. One by one, calls stopped, meetings stopped, invitations stopped, even messages became shorter. And one rainy night, Ethan sat completely alone inside a nearly empty apartment, staring at bills spread across the floor. No employees, no clients, no friends. That was the first night Ethan realized something terrifying. A man can lose everything much faster than he built it. But what scared him most was discovering what disappeared first after failure. Because it wasn't the money. It was the people. And by the next month, even the people he trusted most were gone. At first, Ethan kept telling himself the situation was temporary. He believed one good month would fix everything. One new project, one investor, one opportunity. But life was changing faster than his confidence could accept. The office was gone within weeks. The bank froze the accounts. The landlord changed the locks. And one morning, Ethan walked outside and found his car missing from the parking lot. He stood there for nearly a minute, just staring at the empty space. But losing possessions was not the hardest part. People were. The same friends who once called him every weekend now suddenly became busy. Some stopped replying. Some promised to meet him, then disappeared quietly. One friend even lowered his voice in public, as if failure could spread through conversation. Ethan never imagined embarrassment could feel physical, but it did. He felt it in handshakes, in delayed replies, in fake sympathy. One evening, Ethan sold the expensive watch he bought during his best year in business. The shop owner barely looked up while counting the money. And for the first time, Ethan understood something painful about the world. Success introduces you to many people, but failure introduces you to yourself. That night, he returned to his empty apartment, sat on the floor in complete silence, and realized something terrifying. He no longer knew who he was without success. And over the next few months, Ethan slowly began disappearing from his own life. He stopped answering calls, stopped checking messages. He would wake up late, then stay in bed staring at the ceiling for hours. Some mornings, he avoided mirrors completely, because the man looking back at him felt unfamiliar. The confident businessman who once led meetings now struggled to complete simple tasks. He stopped shaving regularly, stopped dressing properly, stopped caring. And the dangerous part was, it did not happen suddenly. It happened quietly, one small surrender at a time. People often call this laziness, but it wasn't laziness. It was emotional exhaustion. The kind that slowly convinces a person that trying again is pointless. One cold morning, Ethan sat alone at a small roadside tea stall before sunrise. Workers rushed past him. Shopkeepers opened shutters. Buses moved. The city was alive. And for the first time, Ethan noticed something terrifying. Life was continuing perfectly, with or without him. No dramatic music, no inspirational moment, just one painful realization. The world does not pause because someone is broken. And as Ethan sat there holding a cheap cup of tea, he asked himself a question he had been avoiding for months. If nobody was coming to save him, then what exactly was he waiting for? And the next morning, for the first time in months, Ethan woke up before sunrise. There was no motivation, no confidence, no sudden miracle. The problems were still there. The bills still covered the table. His bank account was still nearly empty. But something inside him had shifted. Instead of going back to sleep, Ethan folded his blanket carefully. He cleaned the apartment, opened the windows, and for the first time in a long while, he tried bringing order back into his life. Then he found an old notebook buried inside a drawer. The pages were dusty. Most of the goals written inside no longer mattered. But on an empty page, Ethan wrote one sentence. Rebuild yourself before rebuilding your life. He stared at that sentence for nearly a minute, because deep down, Ethan was beginning to understand something important. Discipline does not begin when life becomes easy. It begins when excuses stop feeling comforting. That morning, he exercised for 10 minutes, read 5 pages of a book, and applied for a single job online. Tiny actions, almost invisible actions. But they mattered. Because after months of emotional collapse, Ethan had finally done something dangerous. He moved forward. But Ethan was about to discover something painful about rebuilding your life. The beginning is always the loneliest part. No one applauded his discipline. No one noticed the effort. The world did not suddenly become kind again. Every morning, Ethan woke up before sunrise. He exercised, read books at the public library, applied for jobs during the day, and returned home carrying rejection after rejection. Some companies never replied. Some interviews lasted 5 minutes. One manager looked at his old business profile and asked, "So, what exactly happened to you?" That question stayed in Ethan's mind for days. Because deep down, he was still ashamed of his failure. To survive, Ethan stopped using taxis, ate cheaper meals, sold more belongings, and learned how quietly pride disappears when survival becomes more important. But despite everything, he kept following the routine, not because he felt hopeful, but because discipline had slowly become the only stable thing left in his life. And after months of repeating the same difficult days, Ethan noticed something strange. The pain was still there, but he was becoming stronger than it. Until one night, Ethan came dangerously close to giving up completely. The apartment was dark except for the small desk lamp beside him. Another rejection email glowed across the screen. He read it twice, then quietly closed the laptop. For months, he had been fighting silently, trying, repeating routines, forcing discipline into days that still felt empty. But that night, the exhaustion finally reached his mind. Ethan looked around the apartment. The same walls, the same unpaid bills, the same uncertain future. And for the first time, discipline started feeling pointless. He opened the old notebook slowly. The same notebook where he had written, "Rebuild yourself before rebuilding your life." But this time, Ethan almost threw it away. Because the hardest part about discipline is continuing before life rewards you for it. No applause, no visible progress, just repeated effort inside invisible battles. And sitting there alone that night, Ethan asked himself one painful question. What if my life never changes again? But before sleeping, he wrote one final sentence at the bottom of the page. Do not destroy tomorrow, because today hurts. And the next morning, for the first time in a very long while, something small finally changed. Ethan received a phone call. It wasn't a dream opportunity. It wasn't a big business comeback. Just a small administrative position at a local company. The salary was modest, the office was small, and the younger version of Ethan would have rejected it instantly. But failure had changed him. It had removed the arrogance success once hid inside him. On his first day, Ethan arrived 30 minutes early. He wore the same carefully ironed shirt he had used during job interviews for months. The office manager barely noticed him. But Ethan noticed something else. Peace. For the first time in years, he was no longer trying to impress anyone. He was simply trying to rebuild his life honestly. And slowly, the routines that once felt painful started becoming natural. He woke up early without struggle. He exercised without forcing himself. He read because he wanted clarity, not escape. And one evening, while walking home, Ethan realized something surprising. His life was still simple, but his mind no longer felt broken. Because discipline had done something motivation never could. It gave him stability during chaos. But Ethan was about to discover the greatest thing discipline rebuilds is not your career. It is your identity. For years, Ethan believed success had made him strong. But now he understood something painful. Success had only made him comfortable. The real transformation began after everything disappeared. When nobody admired him. When nobody applauded him. When life stopped being easy. Slowly, Ethan became calmer. He stopped comparing himself to other people. He stopped needing validation. He stopped measuring his worth through money and titles. Instead of chasing motivation, he started trusting routines. Morning walks, reading, exercise. Quiet discipline repeated daily. and something unexpected happened. The same pain that once destroyed him started teaching him. Because suffering changes people in two ways. It either breaks their identity or rebuilds it stronger. One evening at work, a younger employee apologized repeatedly for making a mistake. But Ethan simply smiled and helped him fix it. Months earlier, he would have reacted with stress and ego. But failure had removed something dangerous from him: pride. And while walking home under the city lights that night, Ethan realized he was becoming someone completely different. Not richer, not more powerful, but stronger internally than he had ever been before. And then, one quiet morning, Ethan finally understood the lesson failure had been trying to teach him all along. He was walking to work before sunrise. The streets were still quiet. Coffee shops were opening, the city slowly waking up around him. And suddenly, Ethan realized something strange. For the first time in years, his mind felt peaceful. Not because life had become perfect, it hadn't. He still lived simply. He still carried scars from everything he lost. But internally, he no longer felt afraid of starting over. That was the moment Ethan understood the truth. Success had once given him comfort, but discipline had taught him survival. It was discipline that carried him through humiliation, through rejection, through loneliness, through nights where nobody believed in him, not even himself. And Ethan finally understood why some people collapse after failure, while others quietly rebuild. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is not motivation. It is the ability to continue even when emotions disappear. Because motivation is temporary, but discipline becomes part of who you are. And as the morning sunlight slowly touched the empty streets, Ethan smiled for the first time in a very long while. Not because he had regained everything, but because he had rebuilt the one thing failure almost destroyed: himself. And years later, when someone finally asked Ethan how he survived losing everything, his answer surprised them. He didn't talk about money. He didn't talk about business strategies. He didn't even talk about success. Ethan simply said, "I stopped waiting to feel better and learned to move anyway." Because eventually, he realized something most people learn too late. Motivation is fragile. It disappears when life becomes painful. But discipline stays. It wakes you up when your mind wants to quit. It carries you through humiliation. It protects you from becoming weak during hard seasons. And sometimes, it becomes the only thing standing between a man and complete destruction. Ethan never rebuilt the exact life he lost. But strangely, he no longer wanted to, because the man he became after failure was wiser than the man success had created. And sitting quietly near the window of his small apartment one evening, watching the city lights flicker in silence, Ethan smiled peacefully. Not because life had been easy, but because he survived becoming someone new. And that is the strange truth about discipline. Sometimes, it does not just rebuild your life. It rebuilds you.